Here's the image that inspired this week's Pattern to Polymer tutorial. For the first layer, I'm using some Ivory Sculpey Soufflé, which I rolled out to a setting number 6 on my Atlas machine. I'm using the script rubber stamp from Create Along, and I'm going to add color to it using 2 permanent ink pads. This is a light brown color and sort of a charcoal gray, and I'm going to use a sponge and just add some color here and there. I want sort of a blend of the 2 shades so that it looks a bit like old parchment. For the next layer, I've rolled some Primo white translucent Sculpey to a very, very thin sheet. This is a setting 9 on my Atlas machine. And I'm using a butterfly silkscreen from Create Along. They have several different ones to choose from. And some black DecoArt multi-surface satin paint. I like this paint because it's a little bit thicker and it silkscreens really well. You want to place it with the colored side against the clay sheet and make sure it's in place well. And then apply the paint, and I'm using the squeegee, comes from Create Along too, to screen over it. You want to wash your silk screens immediately after use so that the paint doesn't dry in the mesh areas. And you can use Create Along screens when they're still damp, which is great too. And then decide where you want to place the next butterfly. This is a random pattern of different butterflies going in different directions, so there's really no right or wrong. Continue adding butterflies here and there until you've sort of covered this surface. For the smaller butterfly, to fill in the smaller spaces that are here on my finished silkscreened image, I want this tiny butterfly from this wood mount rubber stamp. I do this to my stamps all the time. I actually cut out the stamp image itself, and I can use it separately or I can use it on the wood mount. Either will work. But I just want this little butterfly. So I'm going to use a permanent black ink pad. This is a StazOn, and just stamp that little butterfly here and there in the blank spaces on this sheet of clay. I let the paint dry and the ink dry, and now I'm going to color them, and this is the phthalo blue pan pastel and an applicator from Create Along. You could use mica powder or blue eyeshadow also. And I'm just going to color very carefully. I don't want to rub and remove any of my silkscreen shape. I just want to dab some color on, mimicking that original photo. So I'm not coloring in the entire wings, just sections of them like in the inspiration photo. I'm going to do this to all the wings on the butterflies. Next, I trim away the excess around the script that I have stamped into the ivory clay, and I'm going to very carefully lift that really thin sheet of butterfly clay and lay it over the surface of this stamped textured clay sheet. Place a piece of parchment paper over the top and then use your hand or your roller to gently press on the surface and make sure that it is adhered to that bottom sheet of clay and that you don't have bubbles. And now you can cut the shapes that you want. I'm using one of the butterflies from the Lisa Pavelka butterfly set at Create Along, and I'm also using the Rounded Possibilities bib collar set. I'm going to cut several of these elements, and you can move the cutters around to make sure you're getting the section that you like. You do want to make sure that when you're cutting, you cut so that your text is going horizontally along the background. It's okay in this case of what I'm doing if you can see the top of that one I just cut is not perfect. There's a piece of it missing, but I'm going to create a bail that will cover that. But I'm going to cut one of the large bib shapes, two of the medium, and then several of the smallest one to make earrings. Now they're all cut out. I'm going to bake them according to the manufacturer's instructions and then let them cool thoroughly. Now that they're cool, it's time to add the backings and the bails. Now this is a metallic mix that I've rolled out to a 4 on my Atlas machine. It's some copper and a bit of gold, and I think there's a little black clay in there. It was basically all scrap that I had to give me kind of a bronze color. And I'm using just a sphere tool to add some hammered texture. I'm going to cut one piece for each of the pieces that I cut and add a little bacon bond and then add those to the back, and then cut a smaller piece to create a bail for each of these rounded pieces for the bib necklace. For the smaller pieces, I rolled it just to a setting 2 so they'd be a little thicker. And I'm just adding the bacon bond to the top and bottom of the back and then carefully mounting it and rolling it over the top to add a bail. I also covered the back of the butterfly with some of this hammered metallic clay. Then I popped them all back into the oven to bake according to the manufacturer's instructions. Once they were cool, I used my finger to apply a very light touch of DecoArt Metallic Luster in Copper Kettle to all of the metallic textured areas and add a bit more shine and bring out the texture. I added a very thin coat of clear liquid Sculpey to the surface of the parchment butterfly areas of each of the pieces and heat set it to give it just a little bit of shine and a little bit more depth of translucency in that clear clay. The jewelry was finished with coordinating sari ribbon and some decorative beads and copper findings. I'm Cindi McGee, and I hope you enjoyed this pattern to polymer tutorial. Find lots more amazing polymer clay videos here on Polymer Clay TV, and share your projects in our Polymer Clay Tribe Facebook group.